away after winning his 100th game as the head coach here at Notre Dame.
The reason I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth, I was born in this country. It isn't what you have, it's what you're taught about the values of life.
We trying to save souls.
So there's a rule in life that said you're either growing or you're dying. And like an old friend once said, we as Americans need to start winning again.
Everyone should ask this question. Am I willing to endure the pain and the suffering and the sacrifice it takes to be a champion?
Greetings and welcome to Lou Holtz Podcast. I'm Lou Holtz, and if you've listened to this show before, you know it doesn't matter if you're Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative, independent, whether you're white, black, yellow, or any color in between. This is not about politics. It's about developing the culture of this country. Any organization, football, business, or a country is determined by the culture of the people. And my personal feeling is we've lost a lot of that culture, and we're trying to go back and examine why. Mark, it's great to have you on the show. After spending nearly a decade on the other side of the table with you on the ESPN College Football Final, it's fun to have you on the other side of things. After 9 amazing years of professional football, you became a successful car dealer. We worked together for 10 years. You were established when I went into TV, having worked with you. Mark, you were also a very talented and an awful lot of fun. Now, been ultra successful in everything you've done, but more importantly, you're just a class individual. I want to start with hearing about your family. I know you have 2 children and you're very proud of, but also I'd love to hear how your parents played a role in your decisions in football.
Oh, growing up in upstate New York and Oneonta, New York, there wasn't really a lot of things to do besides play sports, particularly in the summertime because they were so short because our winters were so brutal. And growing up, my mom passed away when I was 3. So my father worked basically all the time, 2 and 3 jobs, and that's where I guess I got my work ethic from at the beginning. And the thing is, we have 4 other children in the family. I was the 5th and the youngest. And my father always found time at least to go out and throw the baseball with me or football with me out in front of the house every once in a while. That kind of got me addicted to sports, and that was really kind of where I got my start, my experience in sports and how I like sports.
Well, you know how difficult that is, Mark, to come from a one-parent family and have good leadership at the top of the family. So you're very blessed in that respect.
Yeah, I think I feel blessed when I look back on it now, because at that time you didn't realize it because you're a kid growing up. It's just you just take things that are thrown at you, just move on with it. And looking back on it, particularly my father, he did work 2 or 3 jobs, and then he finally had enough money where he opened up a bar restaurant, which was the first African-American in upstate New York to own his own bar restaurant, which was something of a point in my life where I didn't realize how important it was until I finally looked back on it, seeing all the things that he had to go through to get there.
Well, tell us about your 2 daughters, Mark. I know your one was offered a scholarship to Notre Dame Law School and was going to go there, and lo and behold, she ends up at Duke. Tell me about her.
That's my youngest. That's Bryce, and she's done a terrific job. She graduated from Duke Law, but we had her all set up. She was going to Notre Dame. Went up and saw Strip Strzelecki, coach. He took us around, gave us a private tour of the university and the campus. Everything was set. She met up with the coaching staff. So she was going to Notre Dame. We put a down payment on an apartment. She goes, I'm going to take one of these lifetime trips with my friends, one of these bucket list trips, and we're going to go to Cuba. We're going to hang out on the beaches and see what it's like in Cuba just to get that experience because we were born and raised in America. And her and a couple friends went down there, and while she was down there, she was contacted by Duke. And she said she was accepted into the Duke Law School. And I'm like, well, that's great, Bryce, because you're going to Notre Dame. She goes, talk to Duke. I said, what are you talking about? I said, you haven't even visited Duke. You visited Notre Dame. She goes, Notre Dame's the top 10 law school down, but Duke's a top 3 law school. Off she went. She went to Duke and graduated with honors, and now she's doing a terrific job working for Old Mill Benny in New York City.
Well, I know that she's very talented. Mark, you were also a very talented athlete in high school. Not many people know, not only in football, but also in basketball and track. What made you decide to continue with a career in football, where it's so much easier in track or basketball?
Well, track and basketball is a lot easier and a lot more fun. But I kind of look back on it. The first thing I looked at track, it's like, well, how am I going to make a living out of track once I get through college? Well, I guess there's not much of a living to be made there, so that one was out. And then with basketball, I was like 6'6". There are not that many 6'6" centers in the NBA at the time, so I was like, well, let's go to football. So football, I could have an opportunity there, and football was kind of where I made my mark, where I had the most attention. And I really didn't know that much about the recruiting situation because being from upstate New York, you just didn't have the attention that most people got in like Western Pennsylvania or Texas or California or Ohio. There weren't that many players from upstate New York, and obviously nobody from my high school. But there's one player that did go to Notre Dame. His name was Rich Niskert, and that was when I was about 14 years old. He went to Notre Dame and ended up getting hurt and didn't play at Notre Dame. But that was the only player in our whole entire area that went to major college football. So it was kind of interesting, Coach, because I was being recruited by all these schools, and they were looking for big offensive linemen or big defensive linemen. And at the time, I was 6'6", 280 pounds, which back in the day, that was a really big offensive lineman.
Oh, yeah.
So they contacted me, and then I started taking these trips, and it was like, well, this is pretty good. They're flying me around to these schools and campuses, and they're treating me really well. They're feeding me really well. I'm getting nice memorabilia, hats and shirts and apparel and stuff like that. And it was like, I can't figure this out, but nobody's been through that in my area. And it was like, wow, it was like learning on the run. And I took trips to places a lot of people wouldn't believe. I took a trip to BYU because a coach that was from Albany was an assistant coach at BYU saying, you're not going to come here, but you got to love it because you're going to love the way that BYU looked, just the appearance of the campus and the way that it looks and how it is in Utah, because it's almost a little bit like upstate New York. So I took a trip there and was recruited by LaBelle Edwards, and that was pretty cool. Took a trip to Rhode Island, Coach. And the reason why is because they had an offensive line. Yeah, they had an offensive lineman drafted in the second round my senior year in high school. And I'm saying, well, there's a chance I can go there and play. And then the other thing that got me, Coach, is the recruiting coach said, we have Coed dorms. And I was like, wait a minute. It's like, you're telling me you have Coed dorms with Coed floors, and you're telling me these buildings are right on the beach? And I'm like, no way. And he's like, you got to believe it. So I go there and take the trip, and there it was. You know, the university was right there on the beach, and it was Coed floors. It was like, that was an experience. Then I went to Boston College for a trip, and the reason why is because Miles McDowell was the offensive line coach there, and they were sending offensive linemen to the pros every year. And I took a trip to SMU, Coach. And the reason why is because the coach just kept saying, you got to come to SMU. We're going to take care of you. When I got to SMU and I got to my hotel room, there was an envelope and some cash in the envelope. And it was like, well, this is interesting. So SMU was kind of fun at the time.
Well, makes me ask you, why did you go to Pitt rather than SMU unless Pitt's offer was better?
No. Then I go to Penn State. And Penn State treated me like, man, you should be really appreciative and lucky and fortunate that we're going to offer you a scholarship. And I was like, really? Where all these other schools are offering scholarships? I was 16 years old at the time, turning 17. I was young for my age. So then I go to Pitt, and Pitt just won the national championship.
Did your father help?
Go ahead. I go to Pitt, Coach. They won the national championship, and I go to Pitt for the first time. They fly you in at night. So you go through the Pitt tunnels. So when you come through the Pitt tunnels, the first thing you see is a huge, beautiful city of Pittsburgh, all the lights and stuff like that. And you see Three River Stadium, and you see all the buildings and stuff like that. You're just enamored by it. And it was like, wow. And then my recruiting trip, I got to spend one day with Tony Dorsett, and his two friends were Jake Parrish and Cecil Johnson. They took 3 recruits the entire recruiting season. Ricky Jackson, NFL Hall of Famer, Hugh Green, College Football Hall of Famer, and myself, College Football Hall of Famer. And they said, we don't take recruits. You guys better come here. We just won the national championship. So I'm sitting there saying, national champions, Heisman Trophy winner, how can I turn this down?
Did your father help you make your decisions?
Yeah. We talked about it a few times. He kind of really wanted me to go to Penn State because at the time they really sold your parents on the issue. When you took your recruiting trip, they kind of separated from your parents for the weekend, and they wanted to tell your parents that we're going to do all these things for you on the field, off the field. When you're done playing college football, if you don't make it to the NFL, we'll help you get a job and stuff like that and get you set up in society. So he was kind of pushing the Penn State aspect, and it was like, we sat down and talked one day, and he goes, look, this is your decision for the next 4 years. You're going to have to make it where you're going to be happy and you think you can be successful. So you make the decision. He goes, if it's wrong, you're going to have to live with it. If it's right, congratulations.
Well, you sure made a good decision because it turned out very well.
Mark May, quick feet, strong, smart player.
Huge when he played. I mean, he was 6'6", might even be bigger than that. He's got like size 18 shoe or whatever. I mean, he's a monster. And long arms and just a tremendous athlete.
And Mark May, just a junior, 6'5", 280, could very well next season be the best offensive lineman in the country.
During his Pitt career, Mark earned the nickname Mayday. If the team was in distress, you had a third or fourth and short, you're going behind number 73.
McMillan, back of Jones, nice and touchdown.
As a senior in 1980, Mark anchored our offensive line. He was the first winner in Pitt history of the prestigious Outland Trophy.
One of many great Pitt offensive linemen during that era.
It was pretty obvious he was verbal enough to take his football career and extend it into the booth. And he did it with a lot of class and a lot of dignity, and was always a great salesman for the University of Pittsburgh.
As a matter of fact, one of your colleagues here, Mark May, he was out on campus the year that I won the Heisman Trophy, and I threatened him. I told him, you must come to the University of Pittsburgh, even though he's twice my size, and he believed me, man. He knew I would do something bad to him if he didn't come, but it's people like the Mark Mays and the Larry Fitzgeralds that help build your program and bring it back to prominence, which we're on our way back to now.
Just a good friend, happy for him to be in the Pitt Hall of Fame. Congratulations, Mark.
As a college football coach, I will say that the most impressive accomplishment came during your time in Pittsburgh, where you did not allow one sack during your junior or senior year. And that's a talent everywhere in this game. That accomplishment was not just about talent, but was about your mental makeup. Now, tell us about your quarterback, I might add.
Yeah, we had a quarterback. He was some kid that came from Central Catholic High School, tall, skinny kid that had a huge arm. Name was, I think it was Dan Marino. That was the kid's name.
Was Dan Marino. Yeah.
I can remember my junior year, Coach Sherrill coming up to me when Dan Marino started to play. He grabbed me by the shoulder and I said, "That kid's going to be the franchise. Nobody touches him. You got it?" And I'm like, "Oh, okay." So no matter what happens by hook or crook, I'm not going to let my guy touch Dan Marino. So it worked out well. We ended up going 22-2 our last 2 years, and we had great teams and great recruiting. And that, I'll tell you what, our coaching staff and Coach Sherrill did one heck of a job, not only recruiting the players, but developing players at the University of Pittsburgh.
Well, on your staff at Pittsburgh was Jackie Sherrill. I think John Majors. Was John Majors there at the time?
No, Coach. He recruited me my senior year of high school, and then he went to Tennessee after he won the national championship. And that's when Jackie was an assistant coach. He went to Washington State, then came back to Pittsburgh as head coach. So in that time, I was being recruited by Tennessee and Pittsburgh, and it was like, wait a minute, first you recruited me to Pittsburgh, and now all of a sudden, a month later, you're recruiting me to Tennessee. What's going on here? So I ended up sticking with my decision and went to Pitt.
Well, your senior year was amazing. That your team was definitely maybe the best team in the country. However, you did not get a chance to play for the national championship, and that is the reason your dislike at Notre Dame. Now, people understand why you didn't like Notre Dame, but I did. Explain what happened your senior year.
So the way that I was told on how this went down was we played Army in our last game, and we beat Army like 63-5 or something like that, 63-6 or something. They got a safety. And the selection committee was upset. They thought that we ran up the score. We didn't run up the score because all the starters were on the sidelines at halftime. It was just one of those things that we were just better than them. So they thought that we embarrassed one of the academies where we never did. And at that time, it was coming down where Georgia was going undefeated with Herschel Walker. Notre Dame was a one-loss team at the time when they selected the bowls. Well, Notre Dame ended up losing again before going to the Sugar Bowl, where they didn't take us to the Sugar Bowl at that time. They put us in the Fiesta Bowl, so we never had a chance to play for a national championship. Notre Dame ends up with a couple of losses playing for the national championship, and they got routed in that football game where we knew if we played in that game, we would have ended up being national champions.
I understand that you were honored as one of the 70 greatest Redskins of all time. What's the biggest obstacle you had to overcome in order to become part of that very select group, Mark? Because that is special. One of the top 70 Redskins of all time.
Well, going back to that, it was probably the coaching that I achieved there under Coach Bugle. He should be a Hall of Fame offensive line coach. He coached in the NFL a long time. But being drafted there, the obstacles that I had to go through, it was tough because my first year they put me at left tackle. Coach, I'd never played a down at left tackle in my life. I'd always been a right tackle. I'm like, well, wait a minute. It was like, I went through the experience of playing right tackle. I go to left tackle. It was like a decision. I was like, I worked my butt off at it, and I didn't really achieve the goal of being a decent left tackle until about my third year. Then they put me at right guard and right tackle. So it was one of those things where we just built a great team, where we started off 0-5 my rookie season, and Joe Gibbs thought he was going to get fired. So he used to have to report to the owner, Mr. Cook, every Monday morning on what happened with the team, how come we lost, what can we do better. So he thought he was going to get fired his first year. We ended up turning the ship around, and we ended up 8-8 that year. And going 8-8 that year, we just barely missed the playoffs. Then the following year, we went to the Super Bowl and won, and then the following year, we went to the Super Bowl and lost. So we kind of started off with the Hogs, the original Hogs, and there were a bunch of us that played as Hogs, but there were only 8 of us that were original Hogs. So I think that group probably got the notoriety that got me as one of the 70 greatest Redskins, because I was Joe Gibbs' first pick as a head coach in the National Football League. And besides that, I think just the recognition of being one of the original Hogs got me to one of the 70 greatest Redskins.
Well, life is full of up and downs, Mark. And after 9 amazing years of professional football and 115 starts for the Redskins, you hurt your knee and to miss the 90 season. How frustrating was that to be on the sideline after playing as many years as you did without being injured?
It was really tough, and particularly because I tried to come back the following season because the team made the playoffs, and I thought I could come back and play. And at that time, Jim Hannafin was our offensive line coach. But it was just one of those things where I'm out there limping around trying to play and proving that I could go out and practice and play, and it was just really frustrating to me. When the following year we had Plan B, where you could only protect a certain amount of players on your roster. Well, I couldn't be protected by Washington, and I knew that. And I went up to ownership and Mr. John K. Cook, and I said, look, it's Plan B. I know you can only protect a certain amount of players, and you can't protect me. I'm coming off a major injury. I'd just like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to be in Washington and go to 3 Super Bowls and win 2 of them, be a captain of one of those teams, be one of the captains. And he looked at me and he goes, you're not going anywhere. And I said, I understand the business. I went through it with my agent, my attorney, Ralph. We sat down and talked about it. And I said, I've got to do what's best for my family. Abra was born. I had my first daughter, was young at the time, and it was a business decision where I had an opportunity to go elsewhere. And I ended up going to San Diego for a year and got a nice signing bonus and played there for a year and lived there 9 years on and off. And then my last 2 years, I ended up in Arizona. And to me, at that time in my career, it was, well, it's a business decision. I'd love to stay in Washington, but if I'm not good enough to make it here to play for a championship team, then I'll go elsewhere and see what I can do and try to bring back my career and try to at least be a starter back in the NFL again and prove myself that I could come off a bad injury and do it. And I was fortunate enough to do that.
I think Joe Gibbs was one of the great coaches of all time, Mark. What made him great? I know the great respect he had for you because we had him on our show before, and he used to say this, that, coaches say, okay, 2 more plays, and after the second play, they go, well, a couple more, Mark will go. Give him that look. And so I know you had a great relationship with, but what made him such a great coach?
Oh, gosh. He used to give me a sour face when I used to do that, Coach, because I'd count the plays. I'd count the plays. We're running 30 plays, so we got to 30. Then he's sneaking a couple of more without telling us. I'm like, wait a minute, that's 32. And I give him a look. He says, we're just going to run a couple more. We're going to run 5 or 6 more plays. It's like, if we're going to run 40 plays, just tell me we're going to run 40 plays. But the great thing about Coach Gibbs, I think his relationship with God and his faith, and I think just being such a hard worker. Those coaches would be in the coaching room and coaching staff at like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Coach Gibbs would sleep in his office a couple of days a week because they just had that burning desire that they were just such great competitors and they wanted to win. Back then it was, we don't care about the money or anything like that. That was important. But what was most important to them is they wanted to be the best that they could be. They wanted to make sure that we were over-prepared for every situation, and we were. And that's why we practiced so hard and so long, and that's why the coaches worked so hard and so long. And looking back on it, I appreciate those guys so much because they put in a lot of time and effort that a lot of coaching staffs in the NFL didn't even come close to that.
Well, I have great respect for Joe Gibbs, and I've participated in his charity on several occasions. Now, Mark, I've also participated in your charity. Would you tell people a little bit about the golf tournament and the not symphony, but the party you would have after?
Yep. We're in upstate New York and Oneonta, New York. We first started off with hospice, and then it moved to the YMCA, and now we're at the Boys and Girls Club. We like to kind of move it around to divvy up the money because there's not a lot of money in upstate New York and not a lot of businesses that can contribute. But we work long and hard, and we do a great golf tournament. We make sure everybody's taken care of, the celebrities that come in are taken care of. And then after we have a golf tournament, we have a band come in, and it's usually a retro band. And we've done pretty well over the years with some of the bands and some of the singers we've had, like Linda Ronstadt in Chicago and stuff like that. And it's great for the community, and it makes a lot of money for the community, not just because of the charities that we do and we sponsor for, but also it puts a lot of money in the community with the hotels and the car rentals and everything like that, and the food and the concessions. So it's great for the community, and we've been doing it now for over 20 years. And, Bob has done such a great job with it, and everybody that contributes their time and effort into it, it's just been fun, and it's been great for Oneonta.
It's a great time. I've participated in it. Now, when you left professional football, Mark, you became a successful car dealer. Tell me about that.
Well, when I was in the NFL, my first year, Coach, my first mini camp, after practice, a couple of players would put on like a sport coat and leave the building. And I'm like, you guys have businesses or whatever? And they're like, no, we're going to work. Guys were real estate agents. Guys worked at car dealerships. And I'm like, you're in the NFL. And it was like, I thought when you got to the NFL, you didn't have to work other jobs because you're in the National Football League. And obviously now players don't do that because it's totally different now because they're making so much money. And from that point on, I told myself, look, I don't know how long I'm going to play in this league, but I'm going to be prepared for what's coming after this league and what's coming after football. So a friend of mine owned a car dealership, Rick Hunt, and he got me involved with the 4-dealer training program. So the off seasons I'd work at the dealership and I'd go out, I started off working as a technician to find out what they do, working in the parts department to find out what they do it from the bottom up, where the grassroots were, where I knew how to handle the business from the trenches so I could understand it from the bottom up. You know, everybody likes the glamour and the glory of selling new cars and not a lot like that. But if you don't know the bolts and nuts of the back end of the car dealership, you're not going to be successful. So towards the end of my career, I ended up buying into a dealership, and then I bought another dealership, and that's at the end of retirement. And after that, then I started getting heavy into broadcasting my first year out. So they kind of commingled together for about over a decade.
How did writing the cookbook come about, Mark? All the things I know about you, that's the one thing I didn't know.
Well, because growing up, as I told you, my mom passed away when I was 3, so my sisters had to teach me how to cook so I could take care of myself. So growing up, I cooked all the time, and then when I became in the NFL, I'd have barbecues for the guys and dinners for the guys, and they would come over to the house because none of those guys could cook. So it was always, well, let's go over to Mayday's house. He's got to be cooking something. So when I was at the ABC affiliate, one of the writers, the producers there, came up to me and he said, well, all the cooking that you do and the barbecues that you put on, why don't you write a cookbook? And it was right after our second Super Bowl, so it just seemed right at the time. And at that time, it was like, okay, I'll get together and get some of the recipes together. My Aunt Jeanette, which just in her 90s, she's passed away this past week. She had some recipes, and I had recipes for my sister, and I got some of my brothers and stuff like that. My brother and other sisters got their recipes and friends and put them together. And the things that I like most, that I like to cook most, you just put them together in the cookbook and have fun with it. And it sold out the first year, and it sold pretty heavily the second, third, and fourth year. And now people are kind of in the retro. I get cards in the mail and messages in the mail to sign autographs. And it's like, I tried to get your cookbook online and I couldn't find it. Just like, it was over 40 years ago. Who's going to have it?
Well, everything you do usually turns out to be successful. Now, Mark, we worked together for 10 years. You were established when I went into TV. What was the most difficult thing about doing TV over all those years?
I think the most difficult thing was all the preparation and the travel. Because coming into work was always fun. Working with you and Reese and all the guys in the crew, that was always a joy. I got the most out of that because it was fun. But I just think the preparation that I did in the travel is I treated it like football, that I wanted to be over-prepared and to be prepared for any situation. But living in the West Coast and traveling back to Bristol, Coach, you know, that's not easy every week. So
I can imagine.
That's a tough chore.
But nobody was better prepared than you, Mark, and nobody more intelligent than you. And I've often said the two most intelligent and capable people I've ever worked with in any profession was you and Reese Davis, and I think that we had 11 years now. Mark, I got to ask you this question. You may not want to answer it, but it's important to me. How much prejudice have you found in society being a minority?
Some on and off. And it all depends, because sports is a great outlier because you don't have it in sports, because people, if you want to be successful, you know, you have to get along with everybody. But outside of sports, of course, I've run into racism, and teaching my kids about it, I had to get them prepared for it, especially African-American daughters in the society. And it's always going to be there. And the bottom line is you have to just teach them to, 1, be prepared. It may happen. Always keep it in the back of your mind. And 2, how to handle it. And you don't want to handle it with violence. Handle it with intelligence. And the first thing you do is take a step back, take a deep breath, and just ask the person, what is your problem? Do you have a problem with me personally? Or do you just have a problem in all out society just because of the color of my skin? And if you get the answer of the latter, there's not really a lot of things that you can do about it. So basically, you have to handle it in your own way and try to handle it without violence. Today, it really ticks me off because there's so much violence out there. And a lot of it, it's like, use your common sense. You know, just be nice to everybody. I grew up in an era where I was only one of a handful of African-American black students in a high school. I had 220 people in my graduating class. So I didn't face much racism growing up, but it was there, but it wasn't there all the time. And that was one of the good things about growing up in a small town in upstate New York, that basically everybody kind of needed each other and leaned on each other. And I didn't face a lot of it till I got to the South a few times. And it wasn't really prevalent in Pittsburgh, because Pittsburgh's such a mixture of people out of every different culture. It's unbelievable. Yeah. They all know that they have to get along. But sometimes facing it in the South, and sometimes there are issues that you have to overcome. But even with my size and playing football, I felt that it was better for me to rely on my feelings with the Lord and how I'm going to handle things like that than do it with violence, because it could get out of hand so easily. And especially with me with my size, it's just like, why would I waste my time and my life on you?
I tell you what's a great answer, Mark, and having worked with you, you're the most unprejudiced person I have ever been around, and most talented and an awful lot of fun. Now, Mark, this program basically is how do we coach the culture in the family? How do we get this country back? What are the biggest changes we have to make in this country as you see it, Mark?
I think some of the biggest changes, we have to get back to the basics of being good Americans. And what I mean by that is truth, justice, and the American way. That Superman says that. That's what everybody should go by. Because now there's so much vitriol out there, and there's so much meanness out there, particularly in politics. Just go back to doing the good things in America and tell the truth. Just try to do good. Try to do the best. I'm not perfect. I'm going to make a lot of mistakes, and I have in my life. But if you try to be good to yourself and be good to your family, be good to your friends, that should take care of just about everything. I'm really frustrated by in the media, the politicians, they just don't tell the truth anymore. They don't work for us anymore. And I think when people see that, particularly young people in the social media that's out there, it's always negative. It's always bad. And that's what the culture has turned to. We've got to get back to where, you know what? Let's trust thy neighbor. Let's trust your family. Let's love thy neighbor and your family. And to get back to those simple things that are basic things that are easy to do, I think if we did that, our culture would be a heck of a lot better now and in the future.
Mark, when they asked me to do this podcast, I'm not a professional by any stretch of imagination. I have trouble reading the script, but I wanted you on, and I think now everybody can understand why. Because you're a class act, you call it the way it is, you've been ultra successful in everything you've done, but more importantly, you're just a class individual. I'm proud to call you my friend and my neighbor. And if you ever have a problem, Mark, you call me. Then you call 911. You're the best. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Coach. Love you.
And he walks away after winning his 100th game as the head coach here at Notre Dame.
The reason I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth, I was born in this country. It isn't what you have, it's what you're taught about the values of life.
We trying to save souls.
So there's a rule in life that you're either growing or you're dying. And like an old friend once said, we as Americans need to start winning again.
Everyone should ask this question. Am I willing to endure the pain and the suffering and the sacrifice it takes to be a champion?